join in the middle.
Hello, Baruch. How are you?
Good.
Good.
We're going to get an early start right now just to catch up
Good.
because we have to finish one thing from yesterday before we start the new parak today. So
Let's do it.
let's do it, right? So today's daf is daf Yudalid, and we're going to begin on daf Yugimel Amid Beis. We're towards the bottom. I just want to just review what the Mishnah said. The Mishnah said, we learned a few things you're not allowed to do on Chol Hamoed. Number one is certain things that are malacha, some things that make you too busy on Chol Hamoed, like you can't play the stock market on Chol Hamoed, and some that gives you something that's like uvda dechoil. It looks like weekday activity. For example, we learned you're not allowed to plan your move on Chol Hamoed. Even if you're moving just across the street, you can't move your house to across the street on Chol Hamoed. But here we're talking about people who need food for Chol Hamoed. So the Mishnah said, Moichrei Peres, let's say the fruit store man, or Ksus, or the clothing man, the Kalim, or the person who's selling utensils, he's selling dishes. And the people need it because they need it for Yom Tiv, right? So on Chol Hamoed, they're allowed to open the store. But Moichrem Betzina L'Tzorech HaMoed, they're allowed to sell quietly for Chol Hamoed. Why tzina? Hi, Louis. We're just beginning. Just reviewing yesterday. So why is it that if someone is a fruit store or somebody who owns a store cannot open the store Chol Hamoed like the normal way? He has to open it in a private manner. In other words, let's say his store is on Central Avenue. He has to open the gate a little halfway, or open one door and keep one door closed. It looks half closed, half open. The reason is because people will be not understanding you, and they'll think that you're selling the fruits, the clothing, items for people who are going to use for after Yom Tiv, and that you're not allowed to do. You're only allowed to sell things that are going to be used on Yom Tiv, the Tzorech HaMoed. So therefore, you have to do everything bitzin'ah, privately, quietly. So maybe if you have a store in the basement, that's fine. But if you have a store on a major avenue, then you have to do it in a private manner by opening one door, keeping one door closed. Rabbi Yossi, and then we learned in the Mishnah how they were fishermen, hatzayodim, the shoshois, the grosses are wheat pounders and bean pounders, and these are people who prepare wheat, and they do it on behalf to create like say I don't know, for grits or porridge or something like that, groats. So it's like them, it's a high fiber food. So they are processors of high fiber food. They can do their work quietly, modestly, if they're making it for Yom Tiv. So you can fish in a private manner. Rabbi Yossi said, "Hey nechmira atzman." The people who in certain places, like fishermen in certain places, groat people in certain places, they didn't even work on Chol Hamoed. Even if people needed them, they decided that their store is closed on Chol Hamoed. So let's go down to where we left off yesterday. We learned yesterday that Rabbi Yossi said, the Brisa said, Doshoishe, those that crush, Chilka, Targus Vitisone, these three types of wheat, okay? They're crushers of wheat. Why do they crush them? And they make them into like chewable food. So Deutschen, they're allowed to do it, crush their food, bitzina, privately, l'tzorech hamoed, if people are going to use it on Yom Tiv. Rabbi Yossi said, the shoysi tzipore, hey nechmir al atzmish lo yeh Deutschen kol ikar. The tzipore Deutsches would never keep their stores open on Chol Hamoed, no matter what, even if people needed it. Amar Abaya. So now the Gemara just defines what this chilka, targus, and tisane are. So the Abaya said, Amar Abaya said, chilka means you take a piece of wheat and they slice it chada letarte, one piece into two parts. Tagris is a way to slice it into three parts, chada letlas. Tisane means you slice the wheat chada laba to four parts. He also Ravdini said, Omar, he said that chilka is not a wheat that's cut in half, but it's kinta. Wheat, it means it's spelt. So the spelt crushers, again, either chilka is spelt or is a piece of wheat you cut in half. So the Gemara challenges that interpretation. Meisve. We learned in a brisa, chilkel targas v'tisane, all these three things, tameim b'chol makoim. Wherever you find them, you could assume they were processed with water. And when a food item is processed with water, you can assume that it was mekabel tumah. So that's what the brisa says. So bishlama, it would perfectly make sense if you interpreted that chilka means chada letarte, the tlos l'arbe. So all these things are pieces of wheat that were cut in half, and or sliced in thirds or fourths. Therefore, in order to do that trick, you needed to soak the wheat in water. So therefore, I understand what the brisa means. It's tamei. It's tamei. B'shum hachi tamei b'kol makam the iskashur, because it came susceptible because water was used to process it. But if you interpret that chulka means kinta, which means spelt, amai tamei b'kol makam. Why is it tamei? If I buy spelt in any place, I can assume it's tamei. Why would you assume it's tamei if it's spelt? Spelt, you can pick it dry and not have it come in contact with water. So why does haloyis kasher? It didn't come in contact with water, so it's not susceptible to tumah. So why does the brisa say that chilka, which is another word for spelt, it became susceptible to tumah? And for the Gemara, kagoin the mekalfan, we're talking about that this type of spelt, we shelled it. In other words, we took off the peel off the spelt. The lav, the shuru, lo memaya, if you did not soak the spelt in water, loy have mikalfa, you wouldn't be able to shell it. You wouldn't be able to take off the peel. So therefore, again, we have two interpretations of what this word chilka means. Either it means you take a piece of wheat and divide it in half, or chilka means chilka. So chilka means you divide it in half, but chilka could also mean spelt. So the Gemara says, "V'amai korele chilka." Why, if it means spelt, is it called chilka? The shakal chalkayu, you smooth it out by taking off the shell on it. One more piece. Meisve, we learned in a brisa. Hanoidim in adagon. If you make a neder, you're not going to have any grain food. So asur af bepul hamitzri yabesh. You make a promise, you're not going to benefit, you're not going to eat any grain food. So certainly you're not permitted to eat wheat, but you're also not prohibited to eat the dry Egyptian bean, because the Egyptian bean is processed where you pile it up and it looks like wheat. So and therefore neder, although you said wheat, but things that look like wheat are included into your neder. Umutar balach, you're permitted with wet Egyptian bean. Umuta ba'oris, and you're permitted to have rice. Bechilka, and you're permitted to have chilka, tagras, v'tisane. All these three things. So the Gemara says again, it's a certain type of processing of wheat that when you divide it in half, a third and fourth. So you're not piling it up. You're not storing it like grain is normally stored. So shaper, I could understand why you're permitted in that. The nafket la mitaris dagan, it's not considered wheat anymore. It's different than wheat. It's used for a different processing. But if you interpret that it means spelt, dogan ma'al yehud, then it's regular wheat. It's a type of grain. So therefore, if you make a promise that you're not going to eat any grains, why are you permitted to eat chilka, which is spelt? Chilka is a type of grain. So this brisa would not align itself with the interpretation that chilka means spelled. Kasha, that's a good difficulty. One more piece of Gemara before we finish the parak and start the new Mishnah. Rav Huna, a story. Shara luhu lahani krufa yosa. He's permitted in his town the following sellers of certain types of let's say spices for soup, like leek or certain foods that are used to make a turnip, to make a soup tasty. And when these types of things, they spoil quickly. So he permitted them to sell it. They could open their stores and sell it publicly, no problem. They don't have to do it privately. So Eisvei Rav Kahana asked from a brisa, and you can even ask from our Mishnah. Our Mishnah says that if you sell fruits, you have to do it privately. But even the brisa is even more specific. Chanus psuchel and stuff. If you have a store that say it's opened in the basement or it's opened in a private area, then pesach v'noy kedarte. You could open the store normally. But pesuchel reshus rabin, if you have a store that facing the street, then you can't keep both doors open. Pesach achas, you open one door, v'noel achas, you close the other door. You have to open your store, but in a modest way. The Erev Yom Tov Achron Shel Chag, but an Erev Shmini Atzeres, for example, on Hoshana Rabbah, then because of the upcoming Shmini Atzeres holiday, Moitzi, you're allowed to take out all the fruits. You're allowed to open your wares and open the store, publicly, and show those fruits on the street that you're selling fruit, because you want people to buy in honor of the last day of Yom Tov. Only because you're selling for the last day of Yom Tov. But if it's not for the last day of Yom Tov, let's say it's the first day of Chol Moed, you're not allowed to open your store publicly. So the Gemara is now asking Rav Huna permitted the people who were selling these krufvasya to sell even on the first day of Chol Moed in an open manner, with no modesty, no public. Open the store and sell it. Why? We have a problem of maras ayin, that people are going to think that you're selling fruits for after Yom Tov. So the store owners should be keeping their stores open in a modest way. So the Gemara answers the reason why he permitted them. Ha beperi. Our Mishnah is talking about, and the Bryce is talking about regular fruits that couldn't survive, that last even after Yom Tov. Therefore, you have to do it in a modest way. Ha betvalim. These types of spicy things that you put in soups, which definitely go spoil in a day or two, people know that you're selling it for the Chol Moed, for Yom Tov use. So it's obvious you're selling for Yom Tov use, because it's not going to last for after Yom Tov. Therefore, he permitted them to open the store in a public manner. We learned that. So now come the Mishnah. New Mishnah, very famous Mishnah. We know that what should be wrong with taking a haircut on Chol Moed? There should be nothing wrong. It's not a malacha. You go to the barber, take your haircut on Chol Moed. The Chazal asked you from taking a haircut on Chol Moed. We'll learn about that in the Gemara. And also Chazal asked, there should be now malacha. You should. Why can't I put my clothing into the washing machine on Chol Moed? What's the malacha? Push the button and the washing machine should work. It's not. I'm not working. The Chazal said you can't do laundry and you can't do haircuts. And we'll see why in the Gemara. But the Mishnah says, these are the exceptions that people who are permitted to take a haircut on Chol Moed. Somebody came from an overseas trip and he landed right before Yom Tov or on Chol Moed, and he didn't get a chance to take a haircut before Yom Tov. We permit him to take a haircut on Chol Moed. Somebody who was captured, he was a POW, prisoner of war, let's say, and then he finally arrives back home before Yom Tov, a second before Yom Tov, or even on Chol Moed, he's permitted to take a haircut on Chol Moed. Or somebody was released from a local jail, he's permitted to take a haircut on Chol Moed. A menuda is somebody who was excommunicated because he said he's not listening to the Bezdin. He's not going to pay attention to whatever Bezdin has to say. If they tell him that he's guilty to pay, he's not listening. So the Bezdin would put him in excommunication, which means that if you're excommunicated, you're not allowed to take a haircut. No barber in the city is allowed to give you a haircut. You have to wear sneakers. You can't wear shoes. Anyway, you can't be with people. If they permitted, and if he made amends and went to the Chachamim and they said, okay, and they released him from his excommunication, he's permitted to take a haircut on Chol Moed. Somebody who asked the Chacham, he promised he's not going to take a haircut forever. And then he found a heter for his neder. The Chacham released him from his vow. So then he could also take a haircut on Chol Moed. The Nazir Mitzorah who go from Tumah to Tahara, which we know that they have to take a haircut. Mitzorah, when he becomes pure or is healed, has to take a haircut twice. The first time, and then he wastes another 8 days, and then he takes another haircut. Those 5 people are allowed to take a haircut on Chol Moed, but everybody else is not permitted to take a haircut on Chol Moed. Ve'elu mekapsim b'moed. And the following people are exempt from the rule, and they're permitted to do their laundry on Chol Hamoed. Habam and Medina Sayam, somebody who comes from the faraway country and didn't get a chance to do laundry, or he was released from a prisoner of war, a guy was released from jail. All these people did not have the opportunity to do laundry from before Chol Hamoed. So they're permitted from before Yom Tov. They're permitted to do their laundry on Chol Hamoed. Now we go to Yudal and Aleph. And a menuda, and an excommunicated person that the Chachamim said that you're released from your excommunication, you're permitted to do your wash on Chol Hamoed. And somebody who asked a Chacham, he made a neder that he's not doing any malacha on he's not doing his laundry, he's not washing clothing, and then the Chacham released him from his vow, he's permitted to do his laundry on Chol Hamoed. We're up to Yudalet Amar Aleph, the second line from the top. Mitbechois hayadayim. You're allowed to launder hand towels, because they get, now the Mishnah says the exception is you're allowed to launder hand towels, even if you have, quite a few hand towels, but since hand towels get very dirty, so you're allowed to launder them on Chol Hamoed. You're allowed to launder the towel that covers the barber. Let's say you have a barber who's permitted to give haircuts to those people, but he wants to launder his sheet that he wraps around the person who's giving the haircut to. He's allowed to launder that mitbechais, that towel that he wraps around the person that he's giving a haircut to. Umitbechais hasfag, and the towels that you use to wash, to wipe, to dry yourself after you leave a bath. All these things get dirty constantly, and therefore you're allowed to wash them on Chol Hamoed. Hazavim, v'hazavos, v'anidas, v'yoldos, all these people, types of tumah, they tend to dirty their clothing because they're having blood and emissions from their body. Anybody who wants to go from tumah to tahara needs to have 7 clean days without seeing a stain of blood. Hare elu mutarim, they're permitted to wash their clothing on Chol Hamoed. Ushar kol adam, and every other person, asurim, is not allowed to wash his clothing on Chol Hamoed. And I want to tell you, not only are you not allowed to turn the laundry on, but even if you have a goyish maid, housekeeper, she's also not allowed to do the laundry in your behalf, because we're not dealing with a malacha. There's a special reason why Chazal did not want you to do any laundry, not yourself doing the laundry, not your housekeeper doing the laundry on Chol Hamoed. So the Gemara is asking that question. You're now ushar kol adam my time asurim. Why is every person also to take a haircut on Chol Hamoed, and you're not permitted to wash your clothing on Chol Hamoed? What's the reason for that? So the Mishnah says, so the Gemara says, Kidatan, it's a Mishnah. Anshe Mishmor Anshe Maimud, the people who are Kahanim, who have their schedule, let's say they're scheduled to work a week. A family is going to work 1 week in the Beis HaMikdash. They're called the Anshe Mishmar, right? The Anshe Mamud, the people who are the Jewish people who represent, we learned about this in Masechet Tanis, that these are the people that stood by the carbon Tamid, representing the Jewish people during the time that the carbon Tamid was brought. So special groups of people who served in the Beis HaMikdash for a week, okay? So these people take the 1 week off and they're serving in the Beis HaMikdash, okay? So during that week, they're not busy every day of the week because it rotates. Let's say you're a Kohen, maybe you'll work 1 hour that whole week because they have to give the other Kahanim in the group chance to do the service. But that's your week that you're serving in the Beis HaMikdash. Throughout that week, Asurin, you're not allowed to go to, you're not allowed to keep your regular job. But not only that, Asurin the Saper, you're not permitted to take a haircut, Ulchabes to do your laundry, Ulchamishim, but the Thursday of that week, Mutarin, you're allowed to do it, Mipnei Kavod Shabbos, so you could come in for Shabbos. Now, why can't you take a haircut? Why can't you take when you're not serving in the Beis HaMikdash? In fact, you should be allowed to take a haircut because let's say your turn is on Tuesday and the week starts on Sunday for you. So allow yourself to take a haircut. Why don't we allow him to take a haircut on Sunday so that person can be ready on Tuesday for that 1 hour of service that he's going to be serving the Beis HaMikdash? he's anyway off the entire week. My time we did not want anybody to come into their position when they're relying on, you know what, I'll wait till when I'm off that week and then I'll take a haircut. So then every kohen is going to do that. All the people that are going to show up are going to have long hair because they're going to say, I'm off anyway. Let me save the haircut for that time when I'm off. So therefore, we didn't want you to show up to the base of Mikdash looking manuval, looking disgusting with long hair. So therefore, we asked you, they prohibited you from taking a haircut that week so that you'll make sure to take a haircut prior to your service requirements. So hachaname, so also over here, the reason why they didn't allow you to take a haircut on Chol Hamoed, because then you're going to push off the haircut to do it purposely during Chol Hamoed, because you're off anyway. You'll have time. Let me take the haircut on Chol Hamoed. So the first day of Yontif, you're going to have long hair. So therefore, Kadeshli, Consular Regel, we don't want people to come into Yontif looking disgusting with long hair, unshaven, unkempt. Therefore, we told you throughout Chol Hamoed, you're not permitted to take any haircut, shave, or anything like that. And therefore, people will make sure to do everything prior to the Yontif. Okay, so our Mishnah said that there's some people who are exceptions to the rule. 5 people who had an oinus, and because of that, they could not take a haircut prior to Yontif. So we give them the exception. You are permitted to take a haircut on Chol Hamoed. So the Gemara asked, Boy Rab Zera asked the question, of the loy aveda erev regel, kaven the honest mutter, idilma kiven the loy muchachol milsa loy. If someone had another reason why he could not take a haircut on Chol Hamoed, let's say he lost an object and the whole erev Yontif is busy looking for what he lost. You're going to say he's an oinus. He couldn't take a haircut erev Yontif. He was busy trying to retrieve a lost object. So he's mutter. Or maybe you would say, not everybody knows that he was an oinus. People will see a guy taking a haircut on Chol Hamoed. People will assume that everybody is permitted to take a haircut on Chol Hamoed. Not everybody knows he's an oinus. Abaye said, Yomer kol asrikin asurim srike baisas mutarim. People will say, Abaye is just trying to say that we don't differentiate. We should always say that just if we're going to say that he's the exception and everybody else is usher, it won't work. We can't give it any. There's no exceptions to the rule. There's no exceptions to the rule. That's what Abaye is basically saying. No exception. If you had an oinus, you're still not permitted to take a haircut. So what's the difference? The ones in the Mishnah, everybody knows that the guy couldn't take a haircut before Yontif. For example, Rabashkin, he's released on Chol Hamoed, so everybody knows he was released from prison in Chol Hamoed, so he could not take the haircut before Yontif. So since it's popular, everybody knows he's an oinus. But this guy, a regular person, even though he had an oinus, a good reason he couldn't take a haircut before Yontif, we don't allow him to take a haircut on Chol Hamoed. So the Gemara says, Ula Tamich, according to your reason that there are no exceptions to the rule, I'll find you that there is no exception to the rule. Let's say you have one guy who has one shirt. He started the Yontif with a beautiful shirt, but by the first day of Chol Hamoed, he has a mustard stain on it. And therefore, is he permitted? He only has one shirt. He's a poor person. He's permitted to wash his clothing on Chol Hamoed. Why don't we say over there, why don't we say over there, there's no exception to the rule. Nobody should be exempt from this rule. So the Gemara says, yes, because the way he's going to wash his clothing will prove to everybody that he was an oinus. What is the way he's going to wash his clothing? Since he only has one shirt, he's going to wear his coat over his body. He's going to wear a gartel around his coat. And everybody's going to see that his one shirt that he owns, he's going to be doing wash. Oh, everybody's going to know, oh, this guy has one shirt. He's an oinus. Therefore, he's permitted to do laundry. But every person who is an oinus, every other person who's oinus, is not permitted to wash their clothing on Chol Hamoed. Ravashi had another question. The question was like this. Boy, Rab Zera asked this question. Let's say you have one barber in the town, and everybody knows this barber, and everybody comes to his store, and everybody sees that Erev Yontif, he was busy with something else. He lost something, an item, and he himself didn't have a chance to take a haircut. So Uman Sha'avdallah Yaveda Erev Regel Mahu. So he's a popular Uman. He's the one guy in the town that has the store, and everybody knows that he was busy Erev Yontiv and could not take a haircut. So the Gemara's question is, Kivan the Uman, who since he's the only guy in town, everybody knows, it's publicized that, he was an Oynis, he could not take a haircut before Yontiv, so he should be permitted to take a haircut on Chol Moed. He's not so popular as somebody who's released from prison. He's not in the front news. It's only amongst the people who frequent his store and know that this person was an oynis. He's not permitted to take a haircut on Chol Moed. But the Gemara remains by this question. So again, there's only 5 exceptions of people who could take a haircut on Chol Moed. Any other person who has an oynis is not permitted to take a haircut on Chol Moed. Medina Sayam, if you come from Medina Sayam, if you just arrive from a cruise ship, you're allowed to take a haircut on Chol Moed. So Masnis in the like Rabbi Yehuda, our mission is like Rabbi Yehuda. The Tanya we learned to the Raisa, Rabbi Yehuda Ima, Habam and Dina Siyam, somebody who arrives from another country, Lo Yegaleach, he's not permitted to take a haircut on Chol Moed. Who gave him permission to go on that boat and to arrive on Chol Moed? No, Rabbi Yehuda is very strict. Amar Rava. So Rava elaborated and explained what the machlokes is. If a guy goes on a trip, an overseas trip, lashut, to see the world, let's say it's a cruise ship. Lashut will be a cruise ship, and I marked it in red. So he shouldn't have done that, and now arrives back on the cruise ship on Chol Moed. Divrei Hakol Aser. Everybody holds he's not allowed to take a haircut on Chol Moed. Limzoinus. But if he was traveling on away, so he was going to a business trip, he had to go on this trip. So when he arrives back on Chol Moed, Divrei Hakol Mutter, he's permitted to take because he left with permission. He had a right to go on that trip. It was not just a pleasure trip. So when is the argument to Rabbi Yehuda and the Tanakama? Lo nechleku ela harvacha. That's the yellow one. You don't know. He went on a trip, but he has money at home, but he wanted to make an extra profit. Did he have to go on this trip? No, but he went anyway because there was a potential to make a bigger profit. Mar medamele koloshet. So Rabbi Yehuda says that's like going on a pleasure trip, on a vacation, and therefore you're not allowed to take a haircut. Umar medamele lekilmazoinus, and the Chanakama compares it like going for parnasa, and therefore you're permitted to go. So that's the machlokes. So again, if you go on a cruise, on a vacation, you come back Chol Moed, everybody holds aser. If you go for limzainos, for parnasa reasons, then if you come back on Chol Moed mutter, the argument is if you didn't go for parnasa, you just went to try to make an investment or make more money. So it's a machlokes. Rabbi Yehuda says not, and Rabbi Yehuda, the Tanakama holds, our Tana of our Mishnah says it's permitted. Meisvei. I'll ask you a question and try to explain this. This is like a cryptic statement, like a GMAT question. You have to figure out what Rebbe said. I'm a Rebbe. Nirin Devi Rabbi Yehuda. I think Rabbi Yehuda is correct because if you leave and you went on this trip without permission, you didn't have to go. For Divrei Chachamim, I believe what the Chachamim say, that you're permitted to take a haircut on Chol Moed. Kishiyotza, when he went out, vershus. When he went out bershus, which means he was permitted to take the trip. My shloi bershus. What does it mean? He took it without permission. Ilema loshut. Does that mean he took it a pleasure trip? For Amr Tivya call also. You just told me that everybody holds it's not permitted. So then, how could you say that? I think that if you when you leave reshus, and you wanted to go on a pleasure trip, everybody holds it also. The LL Mezainis, if you mean Shloi Bershus means you went because of Mezainis, so Va'amar Divrei HaKol Mutter. So everybody holds Mutter. So what are you saying? It's only Rabbi Yehuda who says it's permitted. Even Chachamim say that if you go on Mezainis, it's permitted. El Pshita Larvecha. The first part of the Brisa is talking about that when Shloi Bershus means that you went for profit reasons. So Rebbe is saying, I paskin like Rabbi Yehuda, that if you go for profit reasons, you should not take a haircut on Chol Moed. Okay, so you explained to me the first part of the Brisa. So then, but Ema Sefer, then explain to me the second part of what the brisa. Rebbe said, "Nirin divrei chachamim kishiyatsa bershus." I hold like the chachamim when you go kishiyatsa bershus. What does it mean? My bershus. That the chachamim, that I think you could take a haircut like the chachamim if you leave with permission. You don't even have to say that chachamim hold you're permitted to take a haircut. You say everybody says you're allowed to take a haircut. But it must be that you're talking about laharbecha for a profit. So you're saying I paskin like the chachamim for profit reasons that you're permitted to take a haircut. V'amrit, you just said before that you paskin like Rabbi Yehuda, divrei Rabbi Yehuda baha, that you paskin like Rabbi Yehuda when it comes to profit reasons that you should not be allowed to take a haircut in Chalamayid. So how do you explain this brisa? So here's the bottom line. Hachi kama, this is what the brisa means to say. Nirin divrei Rabbi Yehuda l'Rabbanim. The Rabbanim would agree to Rabbi Yehuda that you should not take a haircut in Chalamayid. Kishiyotza, if you went on this trip and arrived back, shaloi b'rshus, without permission. You didn't really need to take this trip. Umay nihu, what would be a case in that? Loshud. If you went on a vacation and you come back from the vacation in the middle of Chalamayid, even the Chachamim would agree, Shafil Chachamim, you would not would agree that you're not permitted to take a haircut. Because loy nechluka olav el rabecha. The Chachamim say that only argue Rabbi Yehuda when you left for profit reasons. Avaloshin, but if you left for a vacation, they agree to Rabbi Yehuda that you're not supposed to take a haircut. V'niran divrei Rabban Rabbi Yehuda, and Rabbi Yehuda would agree to the Rabbanim that you're permitted to take a haircut on Chalamayid kishiyotza b'rshus if you went because you needed to do. Umaynihu, what is that? Limzoinus, if you went for parnasa reasons to make a living, then Rabbi Yehuda would agree to Rabbanan that if you arrive back in Chalamayid, you're permitted to take a haircut. When it comes to mazoinus, even Rabbi Yehuda would agree that you're permitted to take a haircut. So this whole dance and jig over here is just to come out with one conclusion. A person who arrives back on Chalamayid from a ship, let's say, he's permitted to take a haircut. It depends why he went on this trip. If he went for a vacation, then he should not take a haircut on Chalamayid. If he went for a business trip and he needed to go, then he could take a haircut on Chalamayid. If he went just for like a semi in between, he went to try to make an extra profit, he didn't need to go. Rabbi Yehuda says you're not allowed to take a haircut on Chalamayid, and Chachamim say you're permitted. The Gemara continues. Amar Shmuel, new Gemara. Katan hanoyle b'moed, an infant that was born on Chalamayid. Now, sometimes infants come out with very, very long hair. You're allowed to give this infant a haircut on Chalamayid. Because he was in jail. He was in his mother's stomach. Certainly, he's permitted to take a haircut. So the Gemara makes an inference. If he was born on Chalamayid, then you're permitted to take a haircut. Let's say the kid was born mi'ikara. The baby was born a month before Yom Tiv. Then you're not allowed to give this baby a haircut on Chalamayid. He was born way before Chalamayid. Don't give him a haircut on Chalamayid. Masav Rapinchas asked the question. There's a brisa that says, Kol Elish Amru Mutar Lagaleach b'moed. If Chazal tell you you're permitted to take a haircut on Chalamayid, then Mutar Lagaleach b'mei evloi. If you become an avol, you're allowed to take a haircut. Those that are permitted to take a haircut on Chalamayid, like the 5 mentioned in our Mishnah, are permitted to take a haircut when they're an avol. Let's medayik from what Rapinchas said. Let's say somebody who is not permitted to take a haircut on Chalamayid, then you'll not be permitted to take a haircut when you're an avol. So let's take for a person. So the Gemara is going to say, if a Katan that was born on before Yom Tiv, you're telling me he's not permitted to take a haircut on Chalamayid. So that little Katan, that little baby, would be also to take a haircut when he's a novel. But that doesn't make sense. So the Gemara says, Vi Amrit, if you're going to say Katan is Bei Plukta, there's a difference between when the Katan was born. If it was born before Yom Tiv, then he's not permitted to take a haircut on Chalamayid. So if you're going to tell me that, that means that this is, since he's also to take a haircut on Chalamayid, this Katan would be also to take a haircut when the Katan lo yaleinu loses his parent. Nimtzis Avelis Neheges Bakatan. Would you say an Avelis is noyeg by a Katan? That doesn't make sense. Tanya, we learned in the Brisa, a Katan that loses a parent, lo yaleinu, mekaran lekatan. He rips his clothing, not because the Katan needs to rip. There's no Avelis by a Katan. We want the other people to get stirred emotionally by seeing the Katan with the ripped clothing, but not that the Katan needs to noyeg Avelis. So the Gemara is challenging that question. By saying that you how could you say that a Katan that was born before Yom Tov is not permitted to take a haircut on Chol Hamoed? Amar Rav Ashi, you could answer that. Mi Katani ha'asurim. Does it say for sure? It's just an inference, but it's not a complete, definite thing. You're just saying that whoever is Asur on Chol Hamoed is Asur. Does it say he's always Asur when he's an Aval? No. Dilma, Yeshman Asur, Yeshman Muta. You can imply that some of them, if someone is Asur to take on Chol Hamoed, he's Asur to take when he's an Aval. But yet, it's possible to have someone who's Asur on Chol Hamoed and permitted when they're an Aval, because Avelis is not noyeg by them. And who is that? The Katan that was born before Yom Tov. These are the type of questions that we'll have on logic exams, where the inference, you think you made a logical conclusion, but it's not definitely so. Your logic has a flaw to it. And the Meimar, he said like this, Amar Shmuel, another thing, he said the opposite. Shmuel said the opposite. Katan, a baby, a little kid, you're allowed to give him a haircut on Chol Hamoed. Loishna, doesn't make a difference, noiled b'moed, if he was born on Chol Hamoed. Even if he was born a month before Chol Hamoed, you're allowed to give this baby a haircut on Chol Hamoed. And now, Amar Pinchas, afanana mitnina. I have a proof that Shmuel is correct. Call Elush Amru, because the Brisa says, if you're permitted to take a haircut on Chol Hamoed, you're permitted to take a haircut when you're an Aval. So let's be medayek. If you're asur l'gayav b'moed, if you have somebody that's asur to take a haircut on Chol Hamoed, asur l'galech b'mei evloi, then you're not permitted to take a haircut when you're novel. So if you're going to tell me, Ahmed, Katan Asr, if you're going to tell me that if a Katan that was born before Yom Tov is not permitted to take a haircut on Chol Hamoed, so then you're going to say like this, Nimtzas Avelis Neheges Bekatan. That means you're going to say that if someone who's also to take a haircut on Chol Hamoed is not permitted to take a haircut when they're an Aval. So then that's implying that a Katan could be an Aval. Tanya, we learned in a Brisa, Mekarin lekatan mipnei agmas nefesh. There's no Avelis per Katan. You only rip for a Katan because you want everybody to be stirred up and be emotional. But there is no Avelis for a Katan. So we have a proof to a riot that what Rav Shmuel is saying is that a Katan is always permitted to take a haircut on Chol Hamoed no matter when he was born. Amar Rav Ashi, no, your inference is not, your logic is not 100%. Mi katani ha asurin. Does the Brisa say that if you're also to take a Chol Hamoed, you're also to take a haircut in Aval? No, Dilma Yeshmem also Yeshmem Mutter. Again, it could be that you're also to take a haircut in Chol Hamoed, and some people will be also to take a haircut when they're in Aval, but it's possible that somebody could be also in Chol Hamoed and yet be permitted to do an Aval, and that could be a Katan that would be born before that would be a Katan that would be born before Chol Hamoed, where he would be permitted, it would be also to take a haircut on Chol Hamoed, and yet there's no Avelis on him. So it's no Raya either way. Let's do another line or two of the Gemara and then we'll stop. The Gemara says like this. Avel, one line of Gemara and that's it. Avel eina noyeg Avelis beregel. And Avel, there's no Avelis in regel. How do you know if someone loses a parent before? We'll see. There's a big mitzvah that you should be happy on Yom Tov. So the Gemara explained, the halacha is like this. If you lose an Avelis beforehand, let's say someone was nifter Erev Pesach, so then also asidarabim v'dacha es yachid. So then there's no Avelis over Yom Tov. Why? Because you have a new mitzvah of being happy, and this is a mitzvah for Gans Klal Yisrael, so therefore it overrides your personal Avelis of you have a mitzvah to be an Avel. So as soon as Yom Tov arrives, Avelis walks away. The Avelis the Hashtahu. Let's say you lose a parent or something that you're supposed to sit shiva on on Yontiv itself. So then you have to continue on with Yontiv, and also essay the Yachid v'dache essay the Rabbim. An essay of a Yachid will not push away, override an essay of the Rabbim. In other words, the mitzvah of Yontiv overrides your personal Avelis, and Avelis will start after Yontiv. Now the Gemara asks one question. Menuda. Okay, so Menuda is, we'll leave it with the question. Menuda, Mahu sheyinig nidui beregel. A menuda is someone who is excommunication, and he's not allowed to wear shoes and not allowed to take a haircut. What happens on Yontiv? Before Yontiv, he was excommunicated, so he's not allowed. He's not wearing shoes. What happens when Yontiv arrived? There's a mitzvah of Simchas Yontiv that override him being excommunicated, because by him being excommunicated, he was excommunicated because he wasn't listening to Bezdin. So this is a big Aveira that he did. So maybe his excommunication would not override the mitzvah of Yontiv, and he has to really keep his excommunication even on Yontiv itself. So the Gemara is going to bring two rayas and come to the conclusion, which we'll learn tomorrow, which will continue tomorrow, that the Gemara is going to come to the conclusion that, yes, if you're excommunicated, you have to continue to be excommunicated even on Yontiv itself. And the only time you get released is if the Bezdin that put you in excommunication, you made amends with them, then they can release you. Otherwise, you have to be noyeg your excommunication on Yontiv. We'll learn about that tomorrow, and also Mitzayra. Okay. Very a lot of halachas. I mean, this is the